All right. Hey, everybody. It's me. It's Paul. Where's Jenny? Jenny was not feeling good tonight, so I'm going to fly a solo. Welcome to Palette Knives Out Livestream, Artcast. I'm going to show you how to do this fun painting tonight. We ended up calling it Dawn of the Toxic Dead. Of course, we have to do something fun and spooky for Halloween. And of course, we did our fun, spooky, fun ones last week. Now we got to do something spooky. And so let's go ahead and zoom on in, and I have to manage all this by myself. So bear with me while I lean over and go, whoop, here we are. Dawn of the Toxic Dead, here it is. We are using 4 colors tonight, and what we're using is black. I'm actually using a color that's called Payne's Gray. It's very similar to black. I use it a lot interchangeably with black. You can use it, or you can use black either way. I'll talk a little bit about the advantages of Payne's Gray versus black and the advantages of black versus Payne's Gray as we get going. But just be aware, it's just black basically. We got white. We are using some Liquitex Basics tonight for our green. And this is a lime green color that we recently picked up just to play around with. And then I'm also using the Liquitex Basics acrylic. I'm also using Naples Yellow tonight. These are kind of good. The Naples Yellow is one that I think everybody should probably have in their collection of paints if you get pretty serious. Lime green, I like having something in this realm available. There's other colors that are similar. There's like a yellow green. We went lime when we picked it up. Lime's a little bit darker than the yellow green because we figured we can always add yellow to lighten this up, add white to lighten this up. But this is a hard color that's kind of hard to get from just mixing colors. Also using for the Payne's Gray tonight, I'm using Utrecht, which is something you can purchase at Blick art stores. Utrecht is a company that's made art supplies for a long, long time, and they were bought out by Blick 10 or 15 years ago. And good brands. And then we're using our standard Acrylic blackout white. And this is good, learning how to paint. It does the job. We use it a lot, even on some of our more like portfolio type pieces. And so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and set this aside, and we're going to take a quick look at what's going on here. And one of the things that's really important in this painting, I said I was going to set it aside. We're going to wait to set it aside a little bit. One of the things that's really important in this painting is we've got perspective that we lay out, and we're going to start laying that out first. And so let's toast to trying some new colors and doing some new fun things and having a good start to our spooky Halloween time. Let me turn this other light on really quick here. Hold on. It get all weak and scrubbly sounding. Here we go. Okay, fine. Don't turn on. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside. What we're going to do first is we're going to lay out our perspective. And we've got a basic perspective. There's several ways to do it. But they're all kind of based on the same basic principle, and that's using a vanishing point. I'm going to use a vanishing point as someplace along the horizon. Sometimes, it's not always, but in the case of the painting we're doing tonight, it is. And I'm just going to use, well, let's use our big brush, I guess. And I'm just going to take a little bit of my Naples Yellow, and I'm going to say, about 1/3 of the way up the canvas and about 1/3 of the way in from the left. I'm going to put a dot there. That's my vanishing point. And I'm going to paint a little V. And then I'm going to kind of do the same basic angle coming up. That's a good place to start. I feel happy with that. So one thing I found while I was doing this painting the other night is our lime green is an interesting color in that it's one of those colors that doesn't have a lot of opacity to it. It's a little bit on the transparent side, and so it really likes to be mixed with water, white. So I'm just going to add some white, and we're just going to fill in, kind of start in the middle of this top section here. And we can add more of this once we get this base on. This is kind of like a foundation, like a primer. And once we get a little bit of this going on here, we can come back in and add more color. But this lime green really gets us this nice acidic, toxic feeling. I wanted to do, Jenny's been asking me for a couple years now to redo a painting that we used to do in the studio called Zombie Shuffle. And that was one that really came about shortly after we started the studio. It was probably like 2012, 2013. It was probably our second fall season through, and we were really into the show Walking Dead, and so like we were like, oh, let's do a zombie painting. We got to do a zombie painting. So we came up with a painting called the Zombie Shuffle. And it's a lot of fun. But I didn't want to just recreate the Zombie Shuffle. I've learned a lot about painting as a whole, and I'm a different artist than I was 12 years ago, 13 years ago. So I wanted to say, okay, let's do something different. Let's bring it to a new level. And, granted, it's like, oh, it's something I have to be able to teach as well. So what I was like, okay, let's think about a different spin on it. So the original Zombie Shuffle was very red and fiery, like, oh, there was a big cataclysmic, the world was burning and all that. And I was like, yeah, that's fun. It's been done. So I was like, what can we do that's different? And I really wanted to use this lime green. And I started using it, and I was like, oh, this looks like toxic waste. And so I just rolled with it. And I was like, okay, maybe this outbreak is from toxic waste fallout kind of thing going on. So I'm just going to kind of get this color. And if you get a little sloppy around this, that's okay. It doesn't matter. Probably better to kind of brush out your lines a bit. Now, the black I'm using Payne's Gray. I'm just going to call it black because most of you probably are going to be using black, so that's fine. It's a little bit of a thicker paint, so I'm going to have to check and see. Yeah, that's perfect. I'm just going to kind of go across the top edge here real quick. Now, why is it that I typically, when I'm painting more gallery pieces or portfolio pieces or just working on my own art, I do, for my own painting, when I paint just to be Paul, I paint with oils primarily. And I don't use black, I use Payne's Gray. And the reason I like Payne's Gray is Payne's Gray it's very neutral. It doesn't alter the color of what you mix with it. So a lot of times you might notice that when you mix black with like yellow, for example, you get like a real acidic green kind of color. And that would work for this painting, that's fine. But sometimes you just want that yellow to be toned down, and that's where Payne's Gray comes into play. It doesn't have that same effect of altering the color you're mixing it with. So that's a good bonus. And I'm going to go ahead and if I bring the original back, this is a good start. I painted the original over. I had started painting and painted black, and then I painted the green over the black. So it's a little bit different looking, but we'll get there. We're going to add some texture and stuff like that. But I'm going to start putting these clouds in. And one of the things I want to do with the clouds is to make it feel a little bit more dramatic over the original. I'm going to take a little bit of my Payne's Gray. I'm going to mix a little bit of my lime, and let's go with a little bit of white too. And instead of just going straight across, I'm going to have it kind of come up at an angle. And this is just like painting clouds. And I'm just doing some little swirls. And we're going all the way up like that. That looks cool. Part of the reason I wanted to do this just a little different than the original was the original, I had already painted the clouds in, and then I put the fire, actually I got done with the painting and I was like, oh, it needs something, it needs some contrast, it needs something that pops. So I added this toxic looking fire in the background afterwards, and I felt like, okay, this would look better to me if this kind of went at an angle that kind of countered the buildings and things like that. If you want to go straight across, by all means, do that. But I kind of like angles. They're more interesting. Since I'm painting alone tonight, tonight's beverage of choice is water. So, not a party when it's just you, but, well, I guess it could be a party if it's you by yourself, but not when you have to drive home. And we'll play this up a bit. That looks pretty good. I want to kind of, this is going to be built up with some coats and some layers. Let me see. Okay, we're good. Just checking my brushes. Probably going to take a little extra white and a little extra Payne's gray here. I'm switching to a smaller brush. This is my number 8. Brush is a little bit wet with water from rinsing it, and that's okay. Just adding some, I like to kind of think of it as like just like little bumpy, little curled cotton balls or cotton candy, whatever. About to get a drip. And again, this we can kind of come back later and play around with this, because it'll, as we continue to build, the paint will go on top of the existing paint much better than it does just over the, even though the canvas is, it's pre-primed, paint always sticks better to paint than it does to primer. So that's good like that. I'm just gonna check. Right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint in my roadway. And I'm just going to take my mix I've been working with. I'm going to add a little bit more white to it. I'm going to add a little bit more of our Payne's gray. I'm going to need quite a bit of this color. I'll show you. I'm going to add just a little bit of yellow here. And you can see it doesn't change it. It just keeps the color and without making anything obnoxious. So just paint the gray. This is our road. Fill this in. And beginning part of a painting is always, you know, looks pretty simple. Like, what is going on? How are we going to get there? Trust me, we'll get there. If you guys have never popped in, we're Palette Knives Out. I am flying solo tonight. My partner in crime and life, Jenny, is not feeling well tonight, so she is taking the night off. Probably watching some Halloween movies with our kiddo and just chilling out. I don't blame him. Again, this is, show you guys the original again real quick. This is what we're working towards. I wanted this painting to kind of feel kind of comic booky. There's a lot of little things going on, but we're just laying in the color for our sidewalk right now. or street, I should say. I guess it's not a sidewalk. And I'll just pop it in here. This is the kind of painting that you guys know, those of you who have watched the channel. We're closing in on 7,000 followers, by the way, which is cool. But those of you who have watched us on a regular basis, you know I don't typically do anything but landscapes. But I like to kind of go outside my lines, if you will, for October and for Halloween. It's always fun to just kind of do something kind of different and do something that's fun and playful. Rinse my brush a bit. You add a little bit of this lime. It actually adds this kind of really nice warmth to the gray. This doesn't need to be really solid. I mean, smoothed out. I mean, you can add all kinds of texture in here. Feel free to say hello when you pop in. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to see you all. Hope everybody has fun plans for this weekend, Halloween, and Halloween on a Friday night. How about that? That could be up for some chaos and calamity. Calamity, ha ha ha. Okay, I like that. I'm going to take a little bit more of this gray like we just used. Add it into our sky, into our clouds, just a little bit more. At any point in time, if you feel like the brush is too big, you can always use a smaller brush and just kind of give yourself a little more control. I can see that that needs to dry just a little bit more. It's wanting to kind of lift the paint. We don't want that to happen. But it doesn't mean we can't rough it in. And we'll probably come in and we'll lighten up this down lower. Because again, we kind of changed. I changed the painting towards the end when I was developing it. So there's a fire down in here, and so it might be good to go ahead and just kind of lighten this up a bit down in here. There we go. So it looks like maybe there's a little bit of glow hitting on the underside of this cloud. My paint is drying really fast tonight, so I don't know what the deal is. It's not warm. It's not necessarily super dry, or I mean, we're in Oregon. It's been raining. You guys, since I am painting by myself tonight, I have my earbuds in. I'm listening to some music just so I don't forget to talk. It sounds like a weird thing, but it keeps me focused a little bit better. And I'm listening to 80s hard rock classics, and right now there's a good one on by a band called Faster Pussycat, and I don't know if you guys remember that band, but a good song. What is it called here? House of Pain. That was a good one. So if I start singing tonight, it's not just random. I've got some music going on, so, but I can't put it on because we do eventually monetize the videos, and then we get copyright hits and dings and stuff like that. And like, I don't make as much money as the musicians, so I don't need to be losing money to them. All right, so now let's start laying out our buildings. This all needs to dry a bit, so we'll let that dry while we work on the buildings. Now, a lot of times when you're doing buildings, I mean, we've got our vanishing point, and I didn't get really into a lot of depth on making the buildings be, you know, a lot of times you'd have more vanishing points so that it creates all these points, and I didn't want to get into that. That's a much deeper thing. That's just like, just do this simple, easy way. And so I'm using the back corners away. I'm using the line as the corners away from the middle of the canvas. And that's so that these buildings cut into the sky and we don't have little wedges of white all over. So I'm going to start really simple. I'm just going to use just the Payne's Gray alone. And, you know, maybe I'll start, this building maybe goes a little further off the edge of the canvas. So I'm going to go over like this. And you can draw lines that come all the way down. You want these lines to be pretty close to horizontal. So maybe use the edge of your canvas like that. And you can add a little bit of white to this too. You can always darken this up. Oh, I guess I should come over a little further with this. This building's a little closer, but there's some people hanging out on the top of this building. So I want to give enough room to be able to get that detail in there. Well, whatever you guys have going on this weekend, have fun. Make sure you're doing safe, smart things. You know, you can do both. They're not, you know, fun and safe, or not things that are mutually exclusive. So don't drink and drive, all that stuff. Have a designated driver. Yeah, there's your public service announcement for the day. All right. So there we go. I can fill in the bottom part later. I'm gonna go ahead and just come down now to where this vertical line intersects with our diagonal. There's our next building. I think at one point in time, one of the versions of Zombie Shuffle, the original, I actually, we live in Portland, and a lot of people assume that Portland and Seattle are like great friends. I guess we get along. We're brothers. But for fun, I put the Space Needle in the background because I was like, if a zombie apocalypse is ever going to start, it's going to start in Seattle because of Starbucks or something like that. You know, I don't even remember what excuse I made, but if you guys want to include some kind of landmark in the background, go for it. Look up a picture. You know, if you wanted to put the Statue of Liberty out here, fine, do it. Whatever it is. Eiffel Tower, that would be fun. Now, eventually, I'm going to make these a little bit narrower. Let my paint stick tonight, guys. maybe it's because I'm using this Payne's Gray as a little bit more of a paste, like a heavier body paint, which is something I really like. The thing I like about using a heavier body paint is you can always add water to it to thin it down, so it's more like the thinner paints that we used to supply when we did the Go Box. It gives you that control to be able to do it. But there's also something nice about the thick paint and being able to get really nice, good texture. So this one I'm not going to go quite as far. I'm going to just use my half of my brush. And all these tops, like normally you would probably come down like this using another vanishing point, but we're just using just straight across, horizontal. And a lot of this is going to get, like the bottom edge of this is going to get blurred out by the, there's a band of smoke. Now this is great if all these buildings are the same height, but maybe they aren't. So if you wanted to make one a little taller, you could. Let's like make this one a little taller, for example. You don't want to make any shorter because you don't want to make it so that your building is off, but like maybe this one's got a little, let's get a different brush here real quick. Actually, no, let's do this. My brush was kind of wet, so it lifted the paint a little bit. So I'm going to use number 8 brush here really quick. I'm going to take a little bit of my color, and I'm just going to go, okay, this one's got more of a top like this. See, I've got too much moisture right there. So I'm just going to leave that alone. That's the important thing, you guys. If you ever have a situation where you've got too much moisture on your canvas from your brush, I know our instinct is to try to keep adding paint, but all that's going to do is prolong your pain. So just leave that alone. So there's our buildings. You know, we can come back later and kind of define the edges. But let's go ahead and do our other side. The other side's not going to take as long. Yep. Now be thinking about, while you're working on this, what kind of postures do you want your zombies to have? I mean, like a lot of them are just dots. They're just heads in the smoke, and so it's not really anything very specific. I had a lot of fun. I did this one that's like half a body crawling across, and this is kind of hard to tell, but it's actually a couple of them feasting on a person or something. Whatever. You just have fun with it, you know. Think of your favorite scene from a zombie movie and recreate it to the best of your ability. But just remember, you're kind of just doing almost like really stick figures. You know, you don't have to be too detailed. They're too small to get a lot of detail into, which is kind of the beauty of a painting like this. Is it doesn't matter. You know, it's just for fun. This is one you're gonna put up on your wall for Halloween, and probably not any other time of year, unless you really like it and you're into, you know, dystopian type of movies and stuff. Maybe that's a lot of fun to do that too. Nobody judging. Nobody judging. maybe mix it up a little bit. Let's go a little narrower. You know, again, like I said, you can vary the heights a little bit taller from your vanishing point line, but you don't feel like you have to. I mean, it's not the point of this painting is not to create this like perfect painting showing your perspective skills. I mean, you could totally Tim Burton this up a bit too if you wanted to and make everything be kind of, you know, wonky and intentionally out of perspective. All right. One thing you can kind of do too, gosh, you guys, I've got what is called a frozen shoulder. I'm getting old. My left shoulder has got an issue where it doesn't have a lot of mobility to it, and it hurts when I try to push past it. So when I started whining about having to reach across to grab a paper towel, that's why. Okay, I just blotted a little bit of moisture off. That's good. That worked. Cool. Where are we at? It was funny, you guys. I had the hardest time getting this painting going. Like I said, Jenny has been kind of trying to get me to do the zombie shuffle painting for a while, and I didn't want to, like I mentioned, I didn't want to just recreate it. I wanted to give it a new vibe, and I just couldn't get going on it. And I had like this really kind of could have ended up being kind of a cool landscape started where there was clouds and that were forming like almost like a skull, well, totally a skull shape in the sky using the same kind of color scheme. And then there were going to be trees, like a hillside that created the underside of the shading of the skull and the jaw and stuff. And it just didn't, I don't know, it wasn't quite there. All right, I'm just going to add a little lighter here. See if what happens if we add a little bit. Let's add a little bit of our Naples yellow here. Yeah, that's good. And I kind of think of this like doing like this kind of a painting to me is, it is almost like doing like a comic book. And I'm not going to claim to be a comic book artist in any way, shape, or form. But I'm using that kind of feeling for my inspiration as I'm working. It's like, oh, okay, if I were a comic book artist, which I'm not, again, not claiming to be, would never be very successful as one. But I'm thinking of it more like the lines and the color usage and things like that. More of a graphical application than oh, I'm painting like Claude Monet or Vincent van Gogh. That's getting a little too dark, I think. So we can and lighten this up. Probably what I'll do is let's just go ahead and keep this going. And I'll probably lighten it up using my bigger brush. That'll make it a little easier. And if you wanted to, let's actually go ahead and lighten it up. I'm going to get my bigger brush. This is my 1-inch wash brush, and I'm going to use a little bit of our lime and a little bit of Naples and some white and a little bit of our Payne's gray. There we go. A little more white. Let's go a little more Naples, a little bit more lime. There we go. I'm not a big fan of just black and white to make gray. I think there's a lot of other combinations that work better, make it more interesting. I mean, obviously it works. But it's not going to worry too much about this down in here because we're going to add our fire in there. But if you can use another color, like I'm using the Naples yellow to lighten up my Payne's gray color, you can do that. It's usually going to give you the same effect you're looking for in gray, but it's going to have a little bit more personality than just black and white. Now, if you wanted to use your smallest brush and add some little curls and texture and stuff like that, you can do that. You don't have to. It doesn't hurt anything to add a little bit of texture, or if you like it to stay smooth and bubbly. I kind of feel like, for me personally, I'm liking the more smooth application for this particular painting. Just have fun with it. You know, that's all this painting is about. This particular painting specifically is just about having fun. So, rinse my brush off really good. I'm going to take a little bit more of my black or Payne's gray, if you will, depending on what you're using. I assume most of you are going to be using black, so I'm going to add some extra little streaks of this color. You can soften it up a little bit if you want to. Another texture in the sky. And I just like to add lots of bits of texture and things like that, just so that it's got more going on. You know, a plain sky is just really almost, I don't want to call it boring, but it just doesn't add much. Just using a smaller brush. Now, what I'm doing with this part is I'm just doing the opposite in terms of texture as these puffy clouds, which I think are more like the smoke of whatever's burning and causing all these people to turn into zombies. This is more upper atmosphere, the wind's taking it and pushing it and making it more jagged. And we'll come back later with our green. Let's see if we can do it a little bit now. The paint might still be too wet, but come back later and add some of that to, you know, really highlight it. But this has got to be dry. You can brush a little bit. Actually, it looks good if you brush a little bit of it in right now. Just bring this color in. I think this is a fun painting in the sense that you really get to kind of just play around with just doing a more complicated painting without a lot of different colors. I wouldn't say more complicated, but you know, there's more going on, and there's something about the lack of color, meaning variety of color. So we've just got, you know, this basic lime green, a little bit of the Naples really is just kind of to soften things here and there. But this lime green, black, white, and that little hint of Naples just to enhance. It really captures that whole, I don't want to call it horror scene, but but that horror vibe of, you know, something's not right. All right. Sweet. This should be getting pretty close to dry down here. It is. So let's go ahead and work on getting our kind of our clouds in down below. Now, one of the things I noticed with this painting is these clouds could be a little lighter. It kind of just looks like the road and everything just kind of blends in. So when we do this band, we're going to lighten it up a bit, and it's the same kind of process we did up above. I'm gonna use my number 8 brush to kind of lay it out, but I'm gonna use a little bit of my black, little bit of my Naples. Got a little bit of the lime green in here too. Go a little bit more Naples, a little more black. There, that's kind of where we want, and I'm gonna add a little bit of white here too. Maybe a little more white. We can play around with this. I think this might be a little bit too dark still, but yep, still a little bit too dark. So I'm going to lighten it up with Naples and a little bit of white. Yeah, that's kind of what we want. Kind of want to hide what's going on further down the road. Like, you can't see the whole zombie horde coming down the road. You're just seeing them start to emerge. And probably what we can do, we can add like a couple of layers of this. I'm going to go ahead and take my bigger brush. Just kind of brush this in. I'm kind of letting this have a little bit of some line to it. When I say line, I'm not mimicking exactly what's going on above, but a little bit. And then just brush it out. so that it fades out, coming down. And let's go ahead and do one more band of this. Maybe make it just a touch lighter. Maybe a little bit more yellow in there. There we go. You might even just try doing a little bit of just pure yellow. Yeah, since you already have wet paint on there. And you could use your smaller brush too to lay this out. This fog is the dangerous part of this whole thing. Now this is just, again, this is just kind of, I shouldn't say again because I don't think I pointed this out, but this is just our base, our foundation for our clouds. So, or our fog, I should say. Maybe it kind of fades into itself right in there. And you could add a little bit of the darker color down below. Just to add some depth here. Trying not to lose what I would call probably the sidewalk, oops, compared to the road. Tilt this a little bit. You can see that coming together. It's getting there. And once this dries a little bit more, we're going to come back. We're going to bring that lime green in pretty aggressively. I'm just going to use a little bit more of our black real quick, just to create a little extra definition between those two layers. Not a lot. There's nothing fancy going on here. Back when I was a traditional painter. No, just kidding. Not going to go that route. The world doesn't need more wannabe Bob Rosses, that's for sure. There's plenty of them. Not that there's anything wrong with Bob. Everybody loves Bob. Let Bob be Bob. Don't steal his thunder. I maybe got a little aggressive with that shadow. We can always lighten this up. This right here is bothering me because it's not quite, it's like kind of ending right on the sidewalk. There we go. That's better. And we're going to come in, again, I'm going to come in after this dries a little bit more. I'm going to come in, let me show you guys the original here. I'm going to come in and bring this lime green on top. That lime green likes to pop on top of darker colors. So once this dries, let me see. I'm just going to grab my smallest brush real quick. Yeah, it still needs to dry a little bit more. But see, we can get that bright color going. And that's going to be, that's how this is really going to start to build and have the depth and the toxic feeling that we're looking for. But we got to let that dry a little bit. We're going to have some fun with that. We're going to add some texture and some what's the word I'm looking for, everybody? Some texture and some curls and some wisps and stuff. We're just going to let it have some movement to it. Okay, while I'm using the smallest brush, I'm going to go ahead and kind of define my gutter here a little bit. You don't want to go too far up. Okay, this should all be dry in here. So we're going to start building our fire. And the fire is kind of fun to do because we're going to start with our green, the tips of the flames, and then we're going to bring that down into yellow and then down into white, and we can play around with it as we go. And also, I'm not going to worry about starting with, you know, real sharp, precise little flames. We're going to just use a bigger brush, move a little bit bigger mountains, and I'm just going to do some curls and things like that. And again, we can redefine this at any point in time. All about layering. I'm going to have this kind of peak a little higher over here. And zoom in a little bit here if you guys want. So you can see up close a little bit more of the process. There we go. I try to think of like the way flames kind of lick and curl, and maybe it comes up a little higher on the side again. I got a little bit too evenly spaced here, so we're going to throw that off a bit right there. You can see when you lay this green color in thick on top, it really has this wonderful toxic color. And this is also, when you pair this up, if you were to do a more natural painting, this is an excellent highlight color for areas where you would have greens. All right, I'm not going to bring this all the way down. I'm going to take a little bit of my Naples yellow now. A little smaller. That was interesting. And again, we can come back once this dries a little bit more. We can come back with our smaller liner brush and add more detail. You can always redefine your buildings. In fact, I would rather see you go over the edges of your buildings a little bit and redefine them than make it look like you traced the background in. So let's get some white hot. What would happen if we add just a little tiny bit of the lime to the white, a little bit of lime to the coconut. Ah, ha ha ha. Almost doing like the way you would do like Northern Lights in a way. I think that looks kind of cool. But what do I know? I'm just the painter. Those of you who are new, Palette Knives Out Artcast, we've been doing this a while. 2019 we started, so hey, little shout out to starting it before COVID. All right. Speaking of zombies, no, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. All right. Let's zoom back out a bit. Again, we're going to come back in. We're going to add some more elements and detail and stuff to the flames. I kind of like how that looks right in there, though. And in fact, this one building right here, I feel like that's starting to look a bit like a church. So let's roll with it. Let's do it. Add a steeple. Oh, I like it. And let's add some definition to some of these buildings a bit. I'm gonna just take our number 8 brush here real quick. Just some of our black. I'm using Payne's Gray instead of black tonight. I'm gonna define the edge away from the light. Add a few little, and let's go ahead and do this one too. I'm gonna add some windows. It doesn't matter if they're perfect. The whole world right in this painting is a disaster, so the windows aren't going to be perfect either. We want this to feel lonely and desolate and chaotic at the same time. Just adding these windows in. When I was first developing this painting, I thought to myself, oh, let's like put a silhouette of a person in one of the windows in the foreground. And I was like, no. Let's like put people on the roof with a little fire because maybe the building isn't safe anymore and they're hiding out. So I did like put, let me bring the original back real quick and you can see I did put some light in some of the windows just because, but this forward building, you see there's no lights in that window and there's like 4 people hanging out around the fire on the roof. And we'll do that. I like doing little hidden things like that when we're doing paintings like this. You know, it's not that hidden, but it's just a little bit more interesting than doing nothing. We'll probably add some highlights on the edges of the buildings too. And technically, these buildings should be getting lighter as you go further away, but they're closer to the flame, so they're more silhouetted. But let's go ahead, let's add some highlights to the edges of some of these buildings too. So I'm just going to take, I don't want it to go real light, but let's add, we're mixing a little bit of Payne's Gray, a little bit of lime, a little bit of Naples, or whatever yellow you're using. You know, and obviously, if you wanted to, you don't have to put, you could take the time and make the buildings have a little bit more personality each. But you don't have to. this is the kind of painting, not building, kind of, I almost said it again. This is the kind of painting you can really play with and have a lot of fun, you know, looking up little things. I mean, you could add a Bigfoot in here if you wanted to, or whatever. It does not matter. There we go. Now for a little bit of light, this is our smallest brush. Again, I'm going to leave the lights off in this building, but I'm going to put like a little dab of yellow. You don't want to do too many. Okay. We're going to get into putting our zombies in here pretty soon. I'm going to take now a little bit of our lime. This color likes to sit on there thick. Of course, we've got the toxic green highlight on the clouds. That's the color that toxic waste is glowing up on the clouds. I don't know, maybe it's fallout. I don't know. Who knows? It's whatever you want it to be. Cool, cool, cool. Let's zoom in a bit. I'll show you how I'm going to treat these clouds here, or this smoke. Just using just the lime green. The heavier you go on with this, the brighter it's going to be, so. And it doesn't have to be like, there's nothing like real precise or technical about how you're doing this. I mean, you're having fun. So, I mean, it's not supposed to look real. I mean, if you ever saw clouds like this that were real, I mean, sorry. It's probably the end times. But, so now when I zoom out, I got maybe a little bit too much going on there. And if you do, you know, you can always take another brush. That's my number 7. Let's go with my number 8. Rinse it off, dry it off. You can kind of soften this up a bit. Just kind of depends on what you want it to look like. If you like less of the green, you could do the yellow. Oh, I like the green. It's popping. I'm really kind of thinking about like the edges first and then just kind of pulling that color down into the body of the fog. You know, not a lot. And I'm really trying not to just trace either. You could. There's nothing wrong with that. You can use this highlight to just define a whole bunch of little edges and things that weren't already there. This just kind of helps imply that there's more. Define these layers. Now I'm going to take a little bit of this green now. And just along, let me zoom in. Let's zoom in. Zoom-a-looma in. Zoom-a-loomba loobity lim. All right. There's some of this toxic waste spilling into the gutters. And so I'm going to define the edge, just not wholly, not like all the way across. Just some little dabs here and there, and then maybe some little drags to the side. The same thing, there's some in the middle of the road too. Over here we're going to have our, let's go ahead and start our barrel. Going to create just a little horizontal line, and then it's going to be just kind of dripping a little bit. Oh good, I'm still on the camera. Good, good, good. And it gets to the bottom of the barrel and it's kind of coming across, and it's going to drip down right there. And it's flowing in the gutter away from there. It's also kind of Yeah. Good. Quick little rinse there. I'm going to come back in with a little bit of our Naples. Add a little bit of brightness. Don't want to do very much because I also want to do a little tiny bit of just pure white. Electrify it. Now, for the barrel. I'm going to do the barrel a little bit bigger than the original. Not much, though. Just using black. Go ahead and put a toxic logo on here. Why not? Brush is wet. I'm gonna add some little white highlights on here. Might need to let this dry a little bit. Yeah, we'll let it dry a bit. Now, one of the things I did with this barrel is I put a leg hanging out of it. So let's put a foot. It kind of looks like a wounded duck or something, but hobby horse, I guess. I'm going to take a little bit of white now. Now when I do these little reflections or little bits of liquid. I try to kind of keep my brush moving mostly horizontal. You might do some little dots. That really makes it look like it's glowing. I actually think that looks really cool. Of course, I'm gonna like it. It's my painting, and I'm supposed to talk you guys into liking it. So hey, it's the best painting you've ever seen. No, I know it's not. Don't worry. I might be confident, but I'm not that confident. Now, this should be pretty dry back up in here now. So let's use our number 4. Do I have 2 number 8s? No, here's my number 4. I want to make this area, like I like the way that looks, but I want to make it pop just a little bit more. But I do like the way that was looking, kind of like a bright glow shining up. Oh, I like the way that looks. That's cool. All right, let's do some more of our just having fun, making flames. Do a little bit more of our yellow. You guys, last week, I was an actor in a murder mystery dinner theater, and I had a lot of fun doing it. I got to play a Dutch paranormal investigator, and during the events and the sequences, Somebody was murdered. I can't tell you who it was because maybe we're going to take this on the road. I'm just kidding. We're not. It was the vampire. Yeah, we're getting there, y'all. Could maybe add some little I'm not sure. Not sure if I like the white up there. Gets too busy. Too busy. Yeah, I'm digging this. This is fun. Again, it's not you guys. Those of you who are familiar with the channel, you know I don't usually paint this kind of stuff. Usually pretty traditional landscapey type of things, so it's kind of fun to do something a little different. I kind of dig how that looks. I like that better than the original I did, where the original was kind of like more of a blobby fire, and this one's more like an intense, there's something really scary going on in the background kind of fire. All right, so let's start. I feel like this, how are we looking on time? We're an hour and a half in, so we're in pretty good shape. There's not a lot that needs to happen. If you wanted to lighten this up a bit, you could. Just, it's almost like just a wash of Naples yellow and white. Or we start adding our zombies and you define the edges with the zombies, and that's always a good way to do it. All right, so let's talk about zombies. I think people work too hard trying to paint the human form when we're doing something like this. And it really doesn't have to be that difficult. I saw somebody describe it as like doing little carrots, basically. And that's essentially like, oh, I did this guy. He's got the real high shoulder and the low shoulder, kind of traditional, kind of zombie shuffly kind of thing, like Michael Jackson's Thriller kind of shape. But really, if you look at the people, it's just vague little impressions of zombies. So I'm going to use my smallest brush. My smallest brush I've got tonight is really long, so this is going to be a little bit interesting. I'm just going to use a little bit of my black. Again, I'm using Payne's Gray tonight. Instead of black. Same basic, they do the same roll. But I'm going to start, like, here's a head. Let's zoom in. Let's zoom in. Whoop. Okay, there you go. I'm just going to start off by creating a head. Now this is our thriller guy, so his shoulder is going way up like this, and his other shoulder's going way down. He's ending up a little bit bigger than the original, that's okay. Kind of looks a little bit like a scarecrow. Ain't going here. And what I'll do is, like, maybe there's another one right here who's just emerging from the fog. Another one here. Oops, bumped the table. Sorry, y'all. Define one. This is how we start to define maybe that there's the clouds here. This one's here, and then there's a head here, and heads here, and here. The further away you go, they just come more and more just like little dots in the fog. And really, it's the lack of definition on them that adds to the spookiness. In fact, when you get back up in here, you could do a lot of just dots that just look like heads. And the more you do, the more it looks like a horde coming. Over here, I put a head. And let's go ahead and just add some vertebrae. Maybe a couple ribs. There we go. And I did put the crawling zombie that's just a half a body, and that's kind of a fun one. So let's go. I mean, it's kind of close to this other one, so but I'm not going to worry about it. Let's just put it a little further out here. So there's the arm reaching. And there's the head. Zoom in. Head's a little bit more upright. Then there's the arm that's down. This arm's got to reach a little further. And then the body just kind of, head can be a little bit bigger. The body just kind of jaggeds out. And because they're all toxic, it's, oops, my brush is wet, so it's laying down a little too much paint. That's all right. It's dragging us. Their blood is turned green, so it's dragging. Oh, maybe that's its legs up there. Yeah. Okay. This guy's got a little bit of something going on there. And then I put over here, show you, over on this side, I put, it's hard to tell because it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. But we're going to put what looks like a couple of creatures feasting on somebody. So, zoom in. It's getting cold in my warehouse, you guys. Starting to feel chilly. All right, so let's put a head right here. And a body like that. Now, this one is head down. Kind of butt up. And then this one's head up. It doesn't really matter what they look like, right? And we'll just put a little shadow in underneath them so that it adds some definition here. Same thing. This guy's casting a little shadow. This is a little shadow here. Little shadow there. We don't want to get too involved in the shadows. What we do in the shadows, right? Okay, so let's add a couple little dots to our toxic waste sign. Oh, bumped my canvas just as I was doing it. Nice. Good job, Paul. That's close enough. Of course, we can always come back in and go doink, doink, doink. There we go. What else am I missing? Oh yeah, we're missing our people up on the rooftop here. So let's start off by making a little bonfire. So a little bit of yellow. They're going to just take a little bit of white now and just add some, not a lot, just a little bit, just to define that a bit. There we go. This is, I mean, this part right here is really just for fun. You can totally leave this out. And I'm going to create a couple little people hanging out here. There's a little head right here. These guys are standing up here. Over here, there's a couple other people sitting. I'm going to let that dry a little bit. There's a couple more people hanging out. Kind of weird doing this without Jenny here, you guys. I'm telling you, it's weird to be host and co-host. All right. Brought to you by water. All right, so let's go ahead and we're gonna let that dry a little bit. I'm gonna move the canvas here. Let's add a little bit of some blood there. And in the original painting, I've got some like crooked antennas and stuff, like old building antennas that you would see on the roof of buildings back in the day, like TV antennas and stuff like that. So let's add some of those. This one's got one, maybe this is just a straight, well, it was straight at one point in time. But everything's gone out of control. We're almost done, you guys. There's not much more to this. I mean, it's the kind of thing you could play with for a long time and just keep adding and adding and adding. But, you know, there's only so much you can do. So I'm going to zoom in on these people again. We should be put a little reflection on them. Let's see. Just taking a tiniest little amount of Naples yellow here and just adding a little bit of some swirlies. This just adds a little bit of extra, a little extra substance to this fog so it feels a little denser. And again, you can always you could keep playing and keep playing and keep playing and little bit of lime with a little bit of white added to it. I don't know if I like it, but you might like it, so do it if you want. Yeah, that's better. All right, guys, I think that's about it. I've got this one little smudge right there that feels like it could be, like it shouldn't be there. So there we go. I'm going to call that done. I just used a little bit of my black and just added some texture. You could do no. I was thinking you could maybe add a little brighter highlights on some of this because the light's coming through here. Yeah, I think that's cool. That works. All right, guys, I'm going to call it good. Feel free, if you're working on it on your own, to just keep working with it. Just keep playing with it. There's nothing wrong with doing more if you're enjoying the process. If you're not enjoying the process, you're done. At least for now. Sometimes you end up working on a painting and setting it aside and coming back a couple days later and being like, oh, okay, I see this a little different. I can move in a different direction. Okay, so I'm going to sign it because I'm starting to get cold, you guys. Of course, I'm wearing shorts and I'm in a warehouse. It's probably about 55 degrees in here, but boom, all done. So let's compare it to the original. I'm going to go ahead and pop my palette out of the way here. And there's the new one. It has more of a comic booky feel to me than the original. I think, I don't know. Which one do you guys like better? I can't decide. Let me know in the comments what you think. I kind of feel like This is too bright. Let me turn this off. Nope, now it's too dark. See if we can turn this down a little bit. Nope, that's just getting warmer. Okay. I kind of feel like I like a lot of the elements of this one, and I like a lot of the elements of this one. And that's kind of always the way it works out. I kind of like the road better in this one. And I think it's because it's more of that kind of yellow-ish hazy kind of color. And that would be something that would be really easy to fix. You could come in and glaze over this once it's dried, and just, you could always re-enhance the zombies if you wanted to. But I like, on the new one, I like that, the way I did that white kind of streaking up like that. That's more interesting looking. I also like the way this really looks like it's glowing. And I like that I added the toxic waste symbol, so that was fun. Anyway, you guys, I'm going to call it a night. I appreciate you coming into painting with me. I'm going to zip back up. I'm back. Hello. Appreciate you checking it out. And we do 2 of these live streams a month. And we do the videos for free now, but we do request, if you can find it in your heart, to subscribe or become a member of the channel. I think it's $2.99 a month, and it just helps us buy art supplies and maintain our equipment so we can keep doing the best we can. We definitely try to mix it up. If you hadn't seen, like last week we did, of course last week it was Jenny and I, but Jenny painted the ghost and I did my version, and we've done lots of other, I mean, we've been doing the painting classes now since 2011, so for 14 years. And we've been doing them on YouTube since 2019, so we're just hit the 6-year mark. And we really are just doing it for fun for the most part, but it definitely helps if you guys become members of the channel. It helps support us, and artists always need support because art supplies are not cheap. So there's my spiel. I hate doing the spiel thing, but you know, we got to do it. Otherwise, you can just like, subscribe, watch the videos, all that fun stuff. Palette Knives Out Artcast, and have a happy Halloween, you guys. Again, be safe, make good decisions, have fun, all that good stuff. And I'm gonna call it a good night, you guys. Happy Halloween.